everyone. Happy New Year's. We have Mr. Ronit Gupta here with us today. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ronit Gupta, and I'm currently a sophomore at Yale University studying computer science and economics.
Where all did you apply when you first going through the application process?
So, for the most part, I applied to East Coast schools, Ivy Leagues mostly, and also some schools in California, USC, UCLA, Stanford, those types of schools.
Got it. And so far, how has your college experience been?
It's been good so far. I think last year was a little bit difficult with COVID because a lot of our classes were online, so it was hard to get a feel for kind of the in-person classes and kind of the professors' teaching styles. But now
Right.
that we've come into in-person classes, it's gotten a lot better. I've been able to kind of interact a lot more with both other people in the classes and the teachers a lot better. And so I've really enjoyed my first semester of sophomore year.
Cool. And so I was wondering what your future career prospects were. Uh,
Yeah, so I'm currently interested in either somewhere in technology or somewhere in finance. So I'm looking at careers in both of them and also at the intersection of both. So maybe hedge fund or quantitative finance type of work.
got it. And so have you done any of that kind of work or internships?
In the past few years, I've worked at tech companies. So I've done software engineering, but I haven't done any finance work specifically. And this summer, I'll be doing investment management. So I'm
Okay.
getting a feel for how that'll be.
Um, what subjects did you take in high school?
So in high school, I took AP chemistry, physics, math, computer science, microeconomics, and macroeconomics. So those were my AP subjects. I also took world and US history, and then English for all 4 years. And then I took 2 years of Spanish language and then 1 year of Chinese language.
Got it. And so, would you mind sharing your AP scores with us if that's fine?
Yeah, I got fives on all of the AP exams that I took.
Got it. And so, apart from AP, were there any other courses that earned you extra credit?
Yeah, so in the math department, for example, I took multivariable calculus and linear algebra. And in chemistry, I took organic chemistry, and then in computer science, I took elective courses such as data structures and computer vision.
Got it. And so, now a key question for most of the audience, a lot of a lot of students take pressure on the extracurriculars they have to do for their profile building. So we're wondering if you could share some of your extracurriculars you did to relieve the pressure and like so students get an idea.
Sure. So my extracurriculars, the first was I was the head of a business club at my school. It was a business competition club, so similar to debate or Model UN. We
Got
did
it.
it for business case studies. So we'd go to competitions and we'd participate in business case studies, in individual and team competitions. So I was the head of that at my school. I also was the head of a startup at my school that printed custom apparel. So we printed apparel for clubs, for sports teams, etc. And then we earned revenue and then we put that revenue back into the business. So I managed the operations and the finance and the people management of that business. And then I was also the head of the Indian and Pakistani Cultural Club at my school.
Got it. And so, what do you think are the key competitions you took part in or activities you did that really made you stand out from the rest of the crowd?
So I think the ones that I mentioned were pretty important. So in terms of the business club, I made it to the international competition. So I spent a lot of time on that, and also developed the club a lot. So we started the club at about 5 to 10 members, but by the time I was a senior, we were up to 50 members. So
Uh,
basically the growth and leadership I kind of displayed through that club was really, really valuable. Also in the business venture that I mentioned, I was able to raise revenues from in a couple hundreds to 500 about at the beginning to multiple thousands, so $3,000 to $4,000 a year in
oh
revenue
wow.
for this apparel. So basically, growth in these clubs and showing the accomplishments in numbers of how I was able to grow and develop in these clubs was really important. Also, another thing I didn't mention was my work experience. So during the summers, I interned at a technology startup based out of Boston. So I did stuff from product marketing to technology, so software engineering to business development. So I could talk a lot about my experiences there and how what I learned and how I gained experience in technology, which is what I wanted to major in college.
Got it. And so, how did you go about even getting the internship? Because a lot of students, um, if they don't have the connection, it's quite hard for them to get an internship.
So the way that I did it was the winter of my freshman year. I was looking for an internship for that summer. And the way that I did it was, so I live in the Boston area. So I emailed hundreds of Boston startup companies. So I emailed them with a very basic resume and a very basic LinkedIn profile. And I said, I'm interested in working for you. And could you hire high school interns or do you hire interns? So I sent hundreds and hundreds of these emails. And it's difficult because a lot of companies, even startups, aren't looking to hire high school students. But
Right.
I sent a lot of them and I got 2 to 3 emails back. Out of those hundreds, I got 2 to 3 emails back, which led to 3 interviews. And then this was the one company that I worked for. They decided to hire me. So I worked with them for all 3 summers of my high school. Yeah, after I did well the first year, they kind of brought me back for the next year, etc. So that was a good way to get a lot of good experience. But also ultimately, it just came down to cold emailing a lot of different places and hoping one will work out.
Got it. And how did you go about balancing your time?
So it was difficult in the beginning because I took on a lot of extracurriculars initially. But I got into kind of a rhythm and I got into a lot of habits. So I think the best way to manage your time is to plan out your week ahead of time and make sure kind of you know exactly where you're allotting your time. It's really easy to get overwhelmed with a lot of AP classes and a lot of homework. But if you kind of schedule your time out in a way that makes sense and don't overload yourself. So understand how long you'll be spending on every extracurricular and devote and actually sticking to that goal, devoting a certain amount of time to each extracurricular in every class and making sure to plan that out ahead of time. It's very manageable to manage your time. And I think like I mentioned before, it's really easier to get overwhelmed, but that's only if you don't have a plan. If you have a plan in place, everything works much more easily.
Got it. And so, were there any like specific tools or anything you used to help plan out your time?
Not any tools specifically. I mostly just used planners or like notes apps or to-do lists, stuff like that. The reminders app, things like that, where I could just note down my priorities and make priority lists is the best way to do it, or
Got it.
was for me.
Yeah. And another thing is another big thing is community service and CAS work. And so we would love to know what CAS work you did and like how much time you put into it.
So the community service I did was through my school. So I volunteered at a local elementary school, a K through 5 school, and I was a teacher's aide in a classroom for uh, students in grades ranging from kindergarten to 5th grade. So that was about 2 to 3 hours a week for most of my time in high school. And then I also worked at an after school program. So I went after school and I worked with, again, students in that same elementary, kindergarten through 5th grade age range in the after school program. So that was another hour-ish per week. So I did that throughout high school.
Okay. And circling back, in the summers, apart from the internship, did you do anything like anything else like competitions or any specific like summer schools or anything like that?
Yeah, so outside of that, outside of the work, I went to some summer programs. So one I did was at the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School. They have a business program called Leadership in the Business World, where I did kind of entrepreneurship and kind of startup building from ground up. So I learned how to create startups, and it was doing an entrepreneurship program there. And then I also did one at Northwestern University called LaunchX. So those were the two programs, both like around startups and entrepreneurship. And I learned a lot and kind of was able to get hands-on experience starting a company. So working with a team and going from ideation to all the way up to a prototype. So I learned a lot from those programs, and that was really helpful.
Got it. So, did you start your own company? Because a lot of students think it's important to start their own company or do something themselves, and so they just force themselves to do it. So,
So we started the company to some extent. We got to a prototype and we worked towards creating an LLC, a limited liability company.
yeah.
But after a while, it kind of all of our members of our team kind of had other things are going on during the school year, so it kind of fell apart. So we didn't exactly get to launch or get to selling products. But I think the journey from starting into ideation all the way through prototyping, we learned a lot through that, and then I that helped a lot. So while we didn't actually start the company or we didn't sell any product, just getting from ideation to prototype helps us learn a lot. And I don't think it's required to start a company. I think if you're genuinely interested and you have an idea that you want to work towards, and what's something is also really important is a good team. So if you have a good team that you want to work with, that's great. But I don't think forcing yourself to start a company is really going to help.
Got it. And so, finally, to wrap up the section, um, were there any like key awards or prizes or things that you won at like school or any tournaments or like qualifying or something like that?
Yeah, so I made it to the international round of that business competition, and I won some smaller awards at school, and then I also qualified for the American Invitational Math Exam, the AMI,
Okay,
as well. So those were the kind of awards that I remember most clearly.
got it. Okay, thank you so much. Do you have any tips for our viewers about the college profile and like building it in general?
So the biggest tip I think I would give is to center kind of your profile around something. So instead of doing like five or six different random activities, trying to find out what you're really interested in doing a couple of different activities centered around that. So, for example, I was interested in kind of technology and entrepreneurship. So my activities revolved around business competitions, around starting a company or starting companies sort of at these entrepreneurship programs, running a student business at my school, stuff like that, where a college can see a coherent profile. They can understand who I am and what my interests are and how I'm going to take that into college. So as I was applying as a computer science major, they could see I'd done computer science work in the past. At the startup during the summers, I'd taken computer science classes, and I'd also done this entrepreneurship stuff. So I was interested in maybe starting a company in the future. And that combined with their resources. So Yale has really good resources for entrepreneurship. So the Sci-City for innovation. They could see that, okay, this kid is a good fit for our Sci-City. So they could take advantage of our resources really well. Or the makerspace that Yale has. Oh, it seems like he'll be using that because he's done stuff with that in the past. So if a college can look at your profile and say, this is where they'll fit in. Okay, they're probably going to be in the computer science building a lot. They'll be using the resources at our innovation lab and our makerspace. If they can understand how you would fit in well at the school, that's a really big advantage for you because they know who you are as a student and what you're really interested in. And if that aligns with the school and that aligns with the resources, and they understand that you are the best applicant to take advantage of those resources really uniquely, then that makes you a better candidate than someone who's maybe really good at stuff, but is really good at five or six different random things. And then admissions is thinking, okay, this person, maybe they'll do this part, maybe they'll use some of these resources, maybe they'll fit in here, but we can't really see them exactly at our school. So what makes you distinctly qualified at each school? So that also another big part of that is doing your research, doing research into the school itself and seeing, okay, based on my profile and my interests, what can I actually take advantage of? Why do I want to go to Yale, for example? What do they have that can help with my interests? So, like I
Got
mentioned
it.
before, the innovation lab and the makerspace were things that I talked about in my application because I said I can uniquely take advantage of them because of where I'm coming from and my background. So creating a coherent profile that the admissions office can then understand and then see at at their school, I think is really important.
Right. Okay, and if it's not repeating, are there any specific tips for essay, when to start writing, how many drafts, anything like that?
Yeah, so the essay tips I'd have was is the summer before the application is due, try to make sure you can get your Common App essay done. So when the supplemental essays then released later, you have your time to focus on those. But if you can get the Common App, the main essay done before that, that relieves a lot of stress later. And in terms of drafts, I would say just keep writing a lot. Don't get stuck initially when you're starting. Don't get stuck on one idea, but write 5 to 10 different drafts. And they don't need to be full drafts. Maybe they can be 1 to 2 paragraphs each, but just get an idea and write it. Just write as much as you can about it and then move on to the next idea until you have a lot of different drafts and then narrow it down from there and then keep writing and rewriting because it's easy to get stuck on one idea. But if you just keep writing, you'll more often than not, you'll usually find things later on that are more interesting than kind of your initial ideas. And then on the supplemental essays, my biggest tip is, like I mentioned before, do research into every school. So if they're saying why Yale, you look in, go to the website, the Yale website, and say, what does Yale have that other schools don't have? Why do I exactly want to go to this school? What courses do they offer? What degree programs do they offer that are different than other schools? What kind of buildings or grants or opportunities that do they have that another school won't have? And specifically talking about those in those essays, that makes you stand out. The rule is if you can just copy and paste a Y X school essay into another application and say just change the name and say Y Z school, then the essay it's not a strong enough essay. If it can just be
Okay.
taken as a template and moved, it's too generic. It has to have aspects from that school specifically.
Great. That was great advice. Thank you so much. And so I think well, that's the end of the interview. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope our viewers have learned a lot from the session. I definitely have. Yeah, thank you. Happy New Year's, everyone. Hi guys, if you'd like a one-page PDF summary of this interview with the key extracurriculars, competitions, leadership positions, classwork, and also updates on the new videos, there's a Google form link in the description. Once you fill it out, we can send it to you. Thank you.